Hi, Happy New Year 2025. I'm the Tolkien Curmudgeon. It's been a while since I've made a video. I've been wondering what I should say in this new year that seems to be so dark. Dark, yes, dark things are happening in the world. Some people think things might be getting better. I don't think so. Anyway, I do think about contemporary events and the news, and I watch the news, and actually I spend a lot more time on that than I do thinking about Tolkien. Yes, I'm very, very, very deeply worried and concerned about the real world. I hope you too care much more about the real world than you do about any fantasy world. Now, a lot of people are fond of pointing out that Tolkien didn't really like allegory, even though a couple of his short stories seem to be allegories, like Leave by Niggle. And so they forget that Tolkien said his works had what he called applicability. They were applicable to things in the real world. I'm not going to comment on politics on this channel because in the essay on fairy stories, Tolkien did point out that fantasy can be an escape from this prison. So once in a while, in order not to go mad thinking about all the horrible things in the world, yes, I like to read Tolkien and sort of escape into that beautiful, magical world. But when I come back, yes, I should come back renewed, refreshed, and recovered. And I hope the world can recover some of that magic that it seems to be losing more and more all the time. And maybe we can get a little hope that we might be able to make this world a better place. But one of the lessons that I draw from reading Tolkien is that we would be a lot better off if we could have virtuous leaders. Now, by virtuous, I don't just mean moral, according to the moral dictates of Christianity specifically. I mean all kinds of good human qualities like compassion, kindness, justice, being a giving person, not seeking your own glory. When leaders in Tolkien stories lack these qualities, when they lack virtue, bad things seem to happen. Let's look at a few examples. Húrin Thallion, when he was released from prison, he was embittered and very angry. And he brought ruin upon the forest of Brethil, and then also on Doriath eventually. But not to omit the fact that through his cry bitterly, as he cried bitterly in the wilderness, calling out to Turgon, he also inadvertently revealed the direction in which the secret city lay, all because of his bitterness. Also, he went to Nargothrond and he murdered Mim. You might think, oh, it's just vengeance. He did, yes, but he killed an unarmed and defenseless person who was the last representative of his race. And then he took the treasure, which was cursed, to Doriath. Brethil was in flames, and then Doriath eventually was destroyed, and so was Gondolin. Fingal himself, you have to admit, really brought ruin upon his realm as well by his greedy actions. The treasure, which was mostly of silver, he wished the dwarves to make 2 thrones for himself and his wife Melian. And he was worried about, oh, isn't there enough silver going to be left over after if I give them all the silver that I've promised as a reward? And then he shorted them on their pay. And that greed for glory and for wealth eventually brought ruin. And also he gave in to the sort of lust for the Silmaril, to possess that beautiful light for himself. That acquisitiveness, that's a lack of virtue. And then also there's Orodreth of Nargothrond. He was not as great as Finrod, who was the friend of men and especially the friend of Beren. Arodreth allowed his realm to become a secret realm where they would shoot all those who intruded. There's a very interesting scene in the poem The Children of Húrin where Túrin is almost killed by an arrow that is shooting through the air, and then he only avoids it by tripping over a branch. And his elf companion cried out and said, "What are you doing? Like, don't you know who we are?" And they were able to get to Nargothrond. But eventually Nargothrond was ruined as well. So I'm saying, when we have leaders who are selfish and leaders who are not virtuous, it can lead to disaster. But what kind of virtue am I talking about? Yes, I'm talking about a welcoming, kind, compassionate virtue, yes. Do you think Tolkien approved of when Turgon, the king, closed off the way of escape and did not allow any more refugees to enter? I believe Tolkien says in one of his letters that Turgon was actually one of the proudest and most unrepentant of the Noldor. Just because the elves do something doesn't mean that it was right. Yes, I do believe we are living in very dark times, and we need leaders who are good people. There are very few of them. But let's hope for the best.